I believe, as a person who lived in New Jersey for a majority of my life and was very familiar with New York and its politics, and then became very acquainted with South Florida politics, which is an extension of New York politics in many ways, especially in Southeast Florida. And then the experiences that we had, particularly in the Black community, when Jen ran against Wasserman Schultz both times. And what we discovered on the second go around, which was very interesting, which is probably something that goes on in New York as well, because obviously the Upper East Side is also extremely Jewish. So what you also have are these versions of political bribery, because there was a community organizer who we're not going to name, but somebody who was very influential, we'll say, within the Black community in the congressional district. And just Jen showing up at one of these events and being allowed to participate in the event brought the wrath of God from Wasserman Schultz down on this woman's head, and basically said, if you ever bring Jen to a public event again, I will make it my mission to get your 501c3 removed from your organization. I'm going to cut off your lifeblood. I will basically put you in the street. Like, that is how they, to me.
She threatened her 501c3 for inviting me to be in a parade.
And I don't think that's unique. I mean, Wasserman Schultz is a certain level of loathsome. We know that. But I would imagine that version of power politics, especially in a place like New York, I would imagine that goes on to get a lot of voters in line.
And Wasserman Schultz was an Obama favorite. Even when she had to leave. She was left in some sort of corruption charge. I can't remember right now.
Well, what happened, this is something that people tend to forget, Norman, and I always like to bring it up. You see, Obama wanted Wasserman Schultz out at the convention in 2012, and she played the anti-Semitism card on him, and he backed off. Like, this was a big story, and I tried to find the clip forever from CNN, and I could never find it. Lord knows when we found out.
Why did you finally have to leave? I forgot what the reason was.
Well, because she was mismanaging the money.
She ran it into the ground. It ended up having to be like bought by the Clinton Foundation, essentially. I mean, she ran it into the ground. She spent as much money in a midterm election season that you would in a general. What was the year that she did that?
So that was 20. Yeah, that was 20.
When she had been entirely discredited, Obama wrote her a love letter. It was so.
Yeah. No. You know, she knows where bodies are buried, is what it is.
Well, I think this is a spectacular transition into a special clip that I was saving that Jen is going to be surprised that I've got. But over this past weekend, there was a little event down in Little Israel, Broward County, Florida.
Oh, my God.
The Democratic Party of Florida, which is led by another Zionazi named Nikki Fried, and all of her cohorts that joined in the event, including Lev Parnas's son, Aaron, among other people. So they had a keynote speaker at this event.
Oh, I know. Okay.
I'm not going to tell you who it is. I'm just going to play this clip for all its glory. You'll get to see what was going on.
This is our state Dem party at its best.
This is the Florida Democratic Party. If you want to know why Florida is a blood red state, well, this will explain a lot.
Ben, few Democrats nationally have reacted to the bombing. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said the president misled the country, failed to see congressional authorization for use of military force.
Keep in mind, they're not saying that they disagree with bombing Iran. It's that he should have sought the congressional people first in order to go and do it.
So he alone shoulders complete and total responsibility for any adverse consequences. Florida Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz spoke exclusively to our Local 10's Christina Vasquez. She's live now in Hollywood with reaction you'll only see right here on Local 10. Christina.
I caught up with the U.S. Congresswoman at a Florida Democratic Party fundraiser at the Hard Rock tonight.
At least they're honest at calling it a fundraiser instead of a gala, because they used to call it the Florida Democratic annual gala. Now it's just a fundraiser, because that's really all it is.
You know, many of the attendees only learning about the strikes as this event was already unfolding. She says that in her view, she does believe Israel's strike against Iran provided a limited window of opportunity to protect our national security interests by ensuring that a U.S. adversary never builds a nuclear weapon.
There's your keynote speaker right there.
Your keynote speaker. This is who you get to come and speak at your event, and you're trying to save the Democratic Party right now? I understand Cory Booker is a nice guy, but you do not get a bigger Zionazi to come and speak at your event.
He was actually a member of the Yale Jewish Society.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, look, he knows which side of the bread is being buttered.
That's the difference between him and Richie Torres. He's actually a nice guy. Richie Torres is just a jerk. And hopefully his comeuppance may be coming sooner rather than later. The good news is, and I'm not, if you needed another motivating reason to get out there and knock on doors for Zoran, Richie has made it very clear that if he becomes the mayor, he's not going to run for governor. Well, at least he's smart enough not to go down that road. And that would be great. If we can get Zoran into the mayor's seat, maybe we could get Richie Torres out of Congress. That would be awesome.
Adding this.
My first concern is for our troops that are stationed in the Middle East, and obviously, you know, deeply concerned about the potential for retaliation. So what is critical right now is that, you know, hopefully.
I want to rip that fucking yellow ribbon right out of her pantsuit.
How did you know what I was going to say?
I don't care. I just want to grab that thing and rip it right out.
Notice how she doesn't have notice how she doesn't have an independent thought in her.
No.
I'm here. I'm a little conservative. Plato in the Republic, he described the ideal society as one in which everybody does what they're best at. And so there's a division of labor. And if you are most skillful at being a carpenter, you should be a carpenter. If you're most skillful at being a lawyer, be a lawyer. So with that in mind, and he said an ideal society, its motto would be mind your own business, which is just do what you do best and don't go in anybody else's lane. So with that thought in mind, I would be perfectly happy to listen to Debbie Wasserman Schultz talk about making latkes and playing mahjong. But once you get beyond latkes and mahjong, Debbie, mind your own business, courtesy of Plato.
Oh, Lord.
It's just terrible.
You know, it's funny because she's thinking to herself.
She hasn't a clue what she's talking about. She has to pretend, you know, everyone knows she's Jewish, so she has to pretend that she cares about the national interest. So we should all care about our servicemen. No, Debbie, you don't give a flying fuck if they were all shot dead tomorrow. You really don't.
No.
First of all, Jews don't join the army. We all know that.
Very few and far between. Very few and far between.
That's correct. That's not our métier. So you don't give a flying fig about any of this. She's just trying to pretend to be an American and wrapping herself in the American flag. But she doesn't care.
God,
But
no.
it is very revealing to me.
There is a difference between somebody who takes the AIPAC money because it's for their career. It's another thing that they take it for their career and they believe in the Zionist.
She probably at some level, she probably does believe it. She was raised in one of those homes, which is a very common home.
I was.
Yeah.
But the difference is that she's in the category of people that are willfully ignorant, right? Like there's people that are actually ignorant. I know people busting ass to just get by. They don't have time to do the research and look into this shit. She is a person of privilege and resources and really could educate herself and know better and doesn't give a crap.
Yeah, I don't think, I listened to you when you talked about Sheryl Sandberg. You can't educate them. They have a scale of values for many reasons, some of which are understandable, some of which are despicable. They believe that Jews are superior. They're Jewish supremacists. They believe that, number one, Jews should be in charge because they're smart. It's just a fact, they're smart. And number two, that Jews shouldn't be held to the same standards as everybody else. They're Platonists. They believe there should be rule by the philosopher kings, and they also believe all those philosopher kings are Jewish. Now, there are good and bad reasons. I should say there are understandable and there are despicable reasons for that. The despicable reasons is this inculcation of the chosen people, this belief that Jews are special, a distortion of the actual religious belief, but that distorted belief has been internalized. And secondly, and you can't get around it, it's just a fact. Jews enjoy spectacular, outsized secular success in the modern world. When we were growing up, it was a point of pride of Jews to be able to say all the founding principles of the modern world, of modernity, Freud, Einstein, Marx, they were all Jewish. Then you go look at the Nobel laureates, Jews represent about 0.00001% of the world's population. 20% of the Nobel laureates are Jewish. And even, you take Harvard, Jews represent 2% of the American population. Harvard in its heyday in the 60s and 70s, it was 25% Jewish. So that goes to people's heads. You get giddy with that, with those facts, and they are facts. You get giddy with it. So you can't really educate them because their fundamental premise is Jews are better. And then they point to you all the evidence. You take somebody like Sheryl Sandberg, who I understand you knew from your hometown, and you described her in a way which I thought sounded accurate. You said two things about her. Number one, very smart. Number two, she earned every bit of her success. She was a grind, as we would call it.
Yeah.
And I knew that type because, Charles Schumer, the current Senate Majority Leader, now known as Chuck, he went to my high school. Utterly brilliant guy, no question about it. Was in a class all his own. And when you read his last book on, anti-Semitism in America, you could see, even though he went to Harvard Law School, he is was the Senate Majority Leader, now the Senate Minority Leader. You could see that Charles Schumer, you may take Charles Schumer out of the ghetto, or in this case, it's the shtetl.
I was going to say the shtetl.
You may take Charles Schumer out of the shtetl, but you can't take the shtetl out of Charles Schumer. When you read the book, it's a very, very tiny universe. It's very striking to me. I felt like when I was reading the book, I felt like I was reading a book by a 90-year-old Jew. He's 76 or something. But his whole mentality, it's the shtetl.
Yeah.
And they are totally convinced of, when you listen, when Schumer, whenever he did interviews for the book, in the past couple of months, or if you read it over and over again, you know what he says is his biggest achievement? Yeah. He's the highest ranking elected Jew in American history. And he keeps repeating it. And repeating it. Go look at his interview on the View. All he cares about, I am the highest ranking elected Jew in American history. So with people with that mentality, look, you knew Sheryl Sandberg. You said she was very bright. That sounded right to me. And he went to Harvard. She was the top student in her class in economics. In her economics class, she was named the top student. So Sheryl Sandberg knows about basic principles of evidence.
Exactly.
That you can't have that academic pedigree and not understand the basic rules of evidence. It's not possible. And there was no evidence. I'm not dogmatic on these issues. I go where the evidence points me. Amnesty International and the UN Commission of Inquiry. What was it? Amnesty? No, Human Rights Watch and the UN Commission of Inquiry, led by Navi Pillay. They said, both of them put out exhaustive reports devastating against Hamas, both of them. But both of them said, we could not confirm that rape occurred on October 7th. We can't. Now, believe me, if they could, they would have.
Of course.
They were desperately trying to create balance between Hamas and Israel. But
Debbie still does it.
Excuse me?
Debbie still does it.
Yeah, she still does. She still goes with the rape narrative.
Yeah, well, but so did Debbie is an idiot. But Sheryl Sandberg is very smart.
Exactly.
And she put her whole career on the line. She said, this was the most important thing I've ever done in my life. She made a Leni Riefenstahl style propaganda film. So because you can't convince them. They walk in to any situation, they walk in assuming Jews are better. She studied under Larry Summers, who was the former president of Harvard economist. And these people, they see anti-Semitism everywhere. Summers, that's the type he was. They see anti-Semitism everywhere, unless, my mother used to say, when Jews look in the mirror, they will refuse to see a blemish. They will refuse to see a blemish.
I think it's also the victim card. With Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she loves to use it as the victim card. I mean, she does that with everything. But some people, I do think, legitimately believe it, and some people know better and just say it. Some people are more fearful.
Let's finish what this ghoul has to say.
This action brings Iran back to the table, where
we bomb them and then they come back to the table.
Just let her finish so she can go away.
In diplomacy, I support protecting the national security interests of the United States of America. What I certainly believe is that there should not
be the U.S. And when she refers to bringing Iran back to the table, she's of course referring to the Mahjong table.
And it's just so absurd when that Iran is still, they never stopped wanting to negotiate it. We pulled out of the agreement. Trump pulled out of the agreement. And then we just pretended to be negotiating with them and then killed their lead negotiator. So to say that Iran needs to come back to the table, it
was perfectly obvious. It was perfectly obvious from day one what was going to happen.